Alrighty, guys, I am back, and ZombieGrub is back as well. So we can just go ahead and slowly but steady get ready for our second series. They have already hosted. Game 1 is going to be played on Babylon. I want to give a quick shout out to my man Non Imba, gifting us 50 euros, saying some cash to get the party started on Friday. That's really awesome. We had a few gifted subbies as well. And obviously Basilisk, as always, giving us 10 subs for our first best of 5. So ZombieGrub, McDonald's is on me.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much.
I gotta show you the finest Dutch cuisine, you know. The best,
yeah, exactly.
The best the Dutch have to offer is the Spikenisse McDonald's, because it's top tier. I'm gonna let the players know that we are ready when they are. Now, I'm kidding, obviously, guys. We're actually gonna go to some nice places later this week. But this weekend is very busy. We've got a lot of StarCraft, and I'm especially looking forward to Sunday, because on Sunday we've got the WTL match versus the Shopify Rebellion, obviously one of the cooler teams in the entire WTL, and Trigger will be playing against Beyond, something I'm very excited for. We're gonna get him, right? Are we gonna
Yeah,
get
you
him?
guys are gonna win. Yep,
Okay.
for sure.
I was looking over at Trigger and he said, yeah. So, all right,
Okay.
let's do it. But yeah, no, I appreciate your vote of confidence as well, ZombieGrub.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
I
we
didn't
have that Yona guy. He's pretty nice to have on a team in a team league.
Yeah. Actually, I think I did initially go to pick Shopify Rebellion on my Liquid bit, and then I was like, oh wait, no, Basilisk.
All right, guys, let's get it on. Second best of 5 tonight means things can get a little more serious. Seems like we might have to rehost this one if FoxeR wants that, because he says he has a giant console. I guess he's got the Warcraft 3 console. It's up to him if he wants to rehost. I'm fine with that. Let's wait and see. Seems like he is not too bothered by it. So I guess we're just gonna roll with it. Second series of the night is for $100. First one is for $75. Second one, obviously the level gets a bit higher, so we're playing for $100. 80 for the winner, 20 for the loser. In the top left side, we've got the man who's been very, very eager to play in another edition of the Big Brain Bouts. He's a man who loves Colossus and a whole lot of zealots. Doesn't love the probes, but he loves them zealots. This is Starcom Ashbringer.
And in the bottom right, as the green Terran, sharing the clan with Clem, I guess. It's a Mlem. Not Flobio, but FoxeR.
It's nice to know that Trigger is a very big fan of us, but the TV was kind of loud in the back, so... He's like, I don't want to hear Roddy, I want to hear ZombieGrub.
I can actually kind of hear it now that I'm paying attention.
Yeah, it's okay, it's fixed. FoxeR is a fun guy. He's been around for a long time. I think he's one of the guys that's very active on Twitch. You see him in a lot of channels. But he also, for instance, helps Rainer prepare for some of the big tournaments. Sometimes as part of an Archon team. But even in the lead up to the ESL Summer Championships, Rainer said that at one point he just played a couple one-on-one straight up custom games with FoxeR because he couldn't really find anybody else. And he's like, you know, the nice thing about FoxeR is that he's always available and he's always down to play some video games.
Yeah, okay, cool. I didn't actually know that, or maybe I did and I forgot about that information, but you know, I was kind of watching some of FoxeR's games and I was like, damn, this is like pretty good, right? And then now thinking back on it, maybe that makes sense. That's why he actually gets some top tier practice and can help out, even though Rainer is considered one of the best players in the world, if not occasionally the best. And then FoxeR is, well, maybe it's not someone that everyone knows unless they do, you know, watch a lot of the North American stuff. Obviously, a lot of the qualifiers, the smaller tournaments, he's consistent. And he has been around for a very long time as well. I feel like he's been around, I don't know, actually. I feel like I was casting him back in like 2013 as well. So it's been a long road for him.
Mm-hmm. Interesting opening here on Babylon. FoxeR not going for a quick factory. This is obviously a map that... Oh, I love that marine movement, by the way. ZombieGrub. Big Brain Bouts is all about the big brain plays. And that's honestly some 200 IQ marine movement there by FoxeR. Hiding the marines on the right. Making it seem that Ashbringer should let that shade finish up. Oh, that's perfect. Very well done.
Yeah. I think FoxeR, I watched the TVP and I was like, damn, this is really good. And then I watched some TVZ again being hesitant and I was like, this is surprisingly good. Because again, like I'm talking as if I don't know him at all. It's just that when it comes to the North Americans in particular, knowing if they're playing a lot or they're studying or they're working or they pseudo retired and then came back, it's all a bit of a question. But FoxeR seems pretty consistent. And then to actually kind of witness their mechanics look really top tier, where, a lot of the time you get into the North America region and it's like, oh, okay, the ideas are awesome and the execution is a little bit lacking. FoxeR actually would come in a lot of times the qualifier as almost like a complete package, but obviously go up against a lot of the strongest names in North America, so it's hard to beat the likes of them. But it's seriously good moves from him, and the very bold 3cc choice to start off the best of 5, I think is just an excellent way to literally start off a best of 5, right? A little bit of that strategy to develop on as the series continues.
And even though Ashbringer is a guy that likes to go quick robo, likes to play it very safe as long as he gets his Colossus out, I do feel he had a bit of a misread as well after losing that Adept. Because I think in his mind he might be going up against 3 Rex. Whereas like, okay, it was a reactor first, bunch of Marines, safe CC on the high ground, very good chance there was a second and a third barracks. He obviously doesn't know about the third CC. So it's not just that FoxeR killed the Adept very quickly and easily, and that was obviously a sweet pickoff. It kind of gave Ashbringer the wrong idea as well, but he's actually going up against tonight.
I think you're absolutely right about that. Now, FoxeR doesn't have a strong idea as to what is happening on Ashbringer's side of the map either, but obviously with the situations at hand, it does favor him. So FoxeR is also playing kind of defensive. 2 bunkers are coming up, but I think the truth is, right, that a Terran player can kind of make that kind of pseudo pivot and be like, oh shoot, defense, but then still build up their stim and combat shields and engineering bay upgrade usually with a lot of bio. And if they delay their medevacs, okay, that's a bit of an issue. If they don't produce SCVs, that's a bit of an issue, sure. But it just doesn't feel as strong as the pivot of the Protoss when they're like, oh no, like I'm gonna die. That's a really strong pivot when the Protoss is to do that.
One thing that's funny about Ashbringer is I've casted him a very decent amount when he went up against the children of Team Roddy, whether it was Cuckoo or Baby Marine, is that he plays Protoss in a way where you're like, that's not going to work. Like, your probe count is just not high enough, you're way too defensive, but because he just stays on like 55, 58 probes forever, he often has monstrous armies, and he will start maxed out fights with like 28 Zealots, and I'm like, that's not a very good Protoss army to start a 200 supply against 200 supply with, but he's legitimately very good and still getting value out of these Zealots, so he's honestly a bit different than a lot of the other Protosses that are around this level, but yeah, this is just the kind of style that seems to work for him. And I do know from the kids that it's incredibly frustrating to play against, because he's just so defensive that Terran players can't do what makes them most happy. And that's multi-prong, drop, kind of see if they can catch the Protoss out of position, because he's often only in one position, and that's his little triangle of 3 bases.
Yeah, kind of making the Terran be a little uncomfortable with the pace that's set can be a surprisingly good move. You can kind of feel if the Terran's a little unsettled. Ashbringer only recently got that sight on the 3rd CC. The initial observer movement didn't show him it, but I think it's been kind of obvious for maybe the last couple of minutes, because there's been no attack, there's been no medevac, there's been no move out. But this is the first time he's really seen it. Obviously going to go for some harassment, but there's only so much you can do. And again, the real troublesome part is like this Marauder count's been building up. So yeah, the medevacs aren't coming out until 7 minutes, hitting at what, 7:38, but it's going to be a pretty large bioforce and backed up by an already completed macro stage. You don't have to worry about transferring your command center over and your barracks, which I actually think does go a long way for the Terran's first attack.
Kind of weird that FoxeR just donated like 4 or 5 Marines there. Kind of felt that a single Marine would have been able to get the job done, to get a bit of a scout off. At one point I was like, are we setting up like some early chaos, maybe show the army in the natural tiny bit of a Marine run by in the 3rd, but then he kind of just pulled back because the Stalkers were being annoying, and in the end we just donated a few Marines now. Obviously it's not going to make or break FoxeR in this game, but still want to be a bit more careful with the units. As Ashbringer is just kind of doing what we expected from him. He's like, alright, 3 bases, that's good for me. Has made a few more probes as he's taking all the gases. Playing double forge. A little bit similar to maybe how Strange likes to play, right? Where it's this double forge, all the upgrades, and obviously running into a Protoss that's going to have a upgrade advantage over you and some cannons and batteries. That's actually very difficult for any Terran.
Yeah. Oh, FoxeR finally moving out. I feel like at some point, I'm just gonna say it now, Flobio and FoxeR is getting into my mind as Florencio. So I'm just like, if I ever say that really quickly, that's what's going on in my brain. FoxeR is finally moving out and looking for that great engagement, which obviously Ashbringer is going to be trying not to give him. And by perfect, I mean a big concave with those healthy Marauders. Already the bio being a little choked up there, Guardian Shield being activated the entire time. Didn't even need a shield battery, actually, to send FoxeR packing.
And that was very good positioning once more by Ashbringer. I was a bit worried for his Robo, but then I saw he had a battery, and I think he's pretty quick with the overcharge. As the Dark Shrine is done, he has warped in 3 DTs in the top right side of the map. FoxeR is building a couple of missile turrets. I hope that they're going to be in the right... I like this little setup, by the way, with the bunker, the missile turret, the sensor tower. That's all kind of cool. Spots the DTs immediately. Good eyes on the American. Like an eagle, a bald eagle.
So if you ever see a bald eagle that's head on, it looks really derpy. It's just pretty amusing. But by the, on the side, on the angle, it's majestic. And FoxeR with some majestic defense against the CT is actually quite good. But, it's definitely gotten to a point where I feel like the 3CC is not nearly as commanding of a choice as I think that, well, I was hoping it would be. Things have really settled. Well, maybe not. This attack going back in. Little hand wave to the right side with the majority of the army, and entering back in the left nets him a disruptor, a disruption on the power of the Robo, and, well, not too much else, actually. Ashbringer prepared for the right side.
Well, I thought that FoxeR did good in the natural, but didn't really get anything done on the top side of the map. And he's also a bit sloppy with his medevacs. Even those medevacs were a little bit late to evacuate. And a lot of Terrans have tried to run into Ashbringer. They lose a bunch of units, and Ashbringer is just going to max out, run to the other side of the map with some very well upgraded Protoss units. FoxeR needs to make sure that, like, I would love a second starport right now, right? Like, he knows about the Colossus count. These 3 Colossus, especially since they're going to be very well upgraded, they are going to be a problem. So getting a second starport for a few extra Vikings is something I would absolutely not hate. Or even Liberators to deal with those disruptors.
If there's one thing that's really bad about FoxeR's late starport, right, is that it didn't give him any mobility to really deliver blows to behind the Colossus, behind the defenses of the Protoss player, or a quick transfer over into the Vikings. The amount of Marauders that you can get if a properly positioned concave can happen can still be scary, but it just, that didn't happen. So then you didn't have many drops to take advantage of the low Stalker count, and you don't have any of those Vikings yet. You still don't have any of those Vikings. Perhaps hard pivoting to one, basically that option, just being like, you know what, I'm not going to find any damage, let's go immediately like 4 medevacs then into Vikings, might have been a better option, but that's now hindsight 2020 and all that good stuff. So it seems like right now FoxeR very much just wants to play that mass bio, so many Marauders, so chonky, and then a couple of EMPs to outlive the Protoss army, which can still have its strengths, but I don't know. I'm also kind of concerned about these upgrades, man. Ashbringer's been double pumping Forge for a long time.
Yeah, +3 is going to finish up at minute 12. Like, that's honestly kind of insane. A Protoss with +3 attack and +2 armor, triple Robo going up to 5 bases. Even if the supplies are close, it just kind of feels that Ashbringer is content. And an Ashbringer that's content with how his PvTs are going, well, Cuckoo is 21, but he has lost the majority of his hairs by all the games that he has lost against this Russian Protoss. I'm starting to get a little bit concerned here for FoxeR. Obviously with the EMPs and the heavy Marauder count, like 30 Marauders is a crazy amount as he thinks of going for it, but running into this many disruptors is always difficult.
Yeah. The style of play from the Terran can suddenly turn ugly very quickly because really the Protoss is vulnerable. Without those disruptors buying time, buying space, or literally getting those hits, this can be a surprisingly effective army. You're running around with your laser beams of the Protoss. You're like, I got this. No, Marauders are chonky. But I really do think that you're right. Like, Ashbringer just feels mostly comfortable. Dealing with this drop does prove to be, again, a bit problematic. Disruptors are going down, but then rather than dealing with it, pulls the trigger. Now, this does make it complicated, trying to bust down a planetary while also minding the amount of Marauders. That is scary, but the stims are really hurting FoxeR right now.
Oh, a couple very nice snipes. Oh my goodness, FoxeR gets 4 or 5 disruptors that had crazy potential. And I think even the planetary fortress was target firing those disruptors there for a split second. That is an amazing hold by FoxeR, because I legitimately thought he was going to get steamrolled by that army. Especially because his bio units were so low in HP. And this drop, or well, this run by started off as a run by, has also killed 2 or 3 disruptors. Amazing hold there by FoxeR. That was actually very impressive.
Ashbringer did choose a bit of a risky, position, right? So he obviously assumed that the drop was not going to do that much damage. He would eventually take care of it. Was hoping a cheeky DT would actually. That didn't happen. But then deciding that he'll probably get rewarded for punishing the limited army back at home. I could see the thought process, but then I know that just is going to be so difficult. The planetary distracts the Colossus a bunch of time, right? You're still rather dependent on those disruptors getting hits, which, yeah, maybe FoxeR was very injured from the stims, but he was successfully avoiding. And add on some of that fancy micro, the focus fire. That really did turn into a bad wombo combo for Ashbringer.
Yep, I'm thoroughly impressed. I actually thought it was very well done. These units were so low on HP. Had a cool split on the ramp. I was like, yeah, one split. Eventually, one of these balls is going to connect, but he did such a great job in gunning them down one by one. Is also transitioning into like the things that you want to see a Terran transition into in the late game, and that is 4 Liberators at a time, advanced ballistics. We're getting a few more gulls. This is actually turning into a lovely game between these two. I mean, last time I said match made in heaven, we had a 3-0, so I don't want to jinx it again, but 15 minutes into Babylon, ZombieGrub, I kind of like what I see between these two.
Yeah, I mean, FoxeR's potential goal with that maxed out bio and ghost didn't really get to show itself as much as we've seen in other TVPs, but the transition over to Liberators I think really is quite perfectly timed. Very much necessary, starting the fight off without being spread out, but getting the EMPs, prioritizing the Liberator siege up. They are just shooting away here, and actually FoxeR sees an opportunity. You're out of disruptor shots, let's go after those Colossus, which he just barely gets.
Oh!
Okay. Oh, he had to swap to priority and is a little late on that, but oof. That aside, FoxeR takes a nice defensive fight once again.
Yep, and this was actually before +2 ship weapons, and the one speech that I've had more times in my life than the slow pylon versus the fast pylon is definitely the combination of EMP and Liberators with advanced ballistics and +2 ship weapons. They will start one-shotting Stalkers. And that is particularly amazing against a gateway guy like Ashbringer, because I don't think I've ever seen this man build Tempest or Carriers. Like, this is something he doesn't do, he doesn't believe in it. So with FoxeR already taking such a good fight before he has +2 ship weapons, imagine what's going to happen once these Liberators starts one-shooting the Stalkers.
Yeah, this is an incredibly difficult position. I mean, I could see a lot of Protoss players, very hesitant to get into those Stargates. It really drags the game down, makes it very slow pace, where ideally you get that tempo going in your favor, kind of like Ashbringer was starting to do, and you just deliver it by multitasking, moving around, and picking off the Liberators. If you take a bad fight when they are already moving on to those completed Liberators, +2 lib range, and they're maxed out and have a beautiful economy, everything FoxeR has, I mean, it's a little bit of a hard, it's a bit of a harsh call, but I really think Ashbringer is basically dead, Like, he's got to really make some moves here and make sure that FoxeR does not make it across the map, sieged up. That's going to be a disaster.
A single Stalker would have been so sweet here for Ashbringer, but he's just kind of broke. He's been losing a lot of probes. It feels like he just wants to make the desperation Hail Mary attack, but this Terran army, it's just beautiful. All of these units complement each other so well. FoxeR is going to use the liberation zones as they're just going to do their thing. Ashbringer is going to blink into all these liberation zones, does fire a couple of Novas, and one of them goes off in a big way. The other one blows up 2 Archons, so that was less successful, but at least one of these Novas was absolutely fantastic. And the blink there, sniping the medevac with precious cargo.
And that didn't really pan out the way that FoxeR was envisioning in his head, He was probably thinking, I'll mass blanket the army with EMP so they can't enter into the liberation zones, hard stop. But I heard one EMP go off, and I think it hit like a couple of Stalkers. And then, running into the disruptors, that ended up being a problematic move. Supplies closer than they were before, that's for sure. Still in favor of FoxeR, but now these fringe orbitals in trouble.
Oh, and these Novas are connecting with a lot of goals. FoxeR is indeed in a little bit of trouble right now. Maybe he could have just sacrificed his base for a split second, but he wanted to save it. Liberator was looking at the wrong position. There is at least a bunker here to buy a tiny bit of time, but we're so ghost heavy, and that's amazing, but we actually need something that's good against Liberators, or against the Disruptors, and it seems like that's just what he's lacking at the moment.
Never seen so many snipes go off. It's Zealots, by the way, but he just cleared them all out. So a good use of the Ghost. I guess if he really couldn't pounce, you know, EMP would maybe shoo Ashbringer away, but it seemed like he was not going to be able to get past his own Sim City. So snipes were a good alternative. The Ghosts still live. Liberators now come up again, and I do think FoxeR still has a good position, but now that things have gotten a little topsy-turvy, there's more room for Ashbringer to play around and hopefully find more moves to make.
I mean, FoxeR has now realized, I think, that one Liberator has been sitting there for 4 minutes. It has 20 kills, and he's like, you know what? If you just refuse to deal with them, maybe I should send out a few more and siege a couple of additional bases. And you know, ZombieGrub, one thing I would like to ask you right before this fight goes down, as we do have a Nova flying forward, is the guessing game. It's something I play very often with chat. We are 90 minutes into this game. How many Disruptors have fallen?
Oh, 13.
I think it's even more than that. As a couple of Novas fly forward, I give Jet a couple seconds to get the guesses in. I'm gonna go with like 19.
Yeah, that might be right. Unfortunately, FoxeR's borderline remax happened way too fast. You look at the mini-map, you just realize how rich and consistent the income was for the Terran. Ashbringer did make a little wiggle room when they were within 30 supply of each other. I think if he was really fast about creating chaos, you know, DTs in the orbital base, Stalkers entering into the production line, something like that, we could have had even more. But at the end of the day, FoxeR gets back to his built-up biocomposition and the benefits from earlier on, and it's actually quite an easy ending there.
Excellent game, though. Almost a 20-minute game on Babylon, where at first we were like, oh, Ashbringer is misreading the game, but obviously strong defensively on his little 3-base setup. Amazing upgrades, +3 attack in minute 12, +2 armor, not falling, or also done, obviously, and +3 armor close to finishing up as well at minute 13, and it felt that there was potential, but at one point FoxeR just kind of picked him apart, got a couple great fights, a god tier hold at the planetary, and I think that was really like the momentum shift right in the entire game, because up to that point it kind of looked like we were going Ashbringer's way, but the hold at the planetary I think is what made all the difference.
Yeah, it absolutely did. Up until that moment where it was obviously a hold, like, you know, Ashbringer was running away. I thought that FoxeR was going to be pretty screwed, but yeah, that combo with the drop also doing more damage than Ashbringer was anticipating. That's very unfortunate. You know, it is tough. It is always it's a real decision to go after a planetary. Even when you have some momentum, obviously a planetary is fairly difficult to break.
I think they've gone to America, but that wasn't really my plan. Like, I think it's different for people from the Netherlands or Germany than it's for like the far Eastern Europeans. But let's just see. I'll go ahead and chase them on NA. And okay, we'll play game 2 on NA, but then game 3 we'll play the rest of the series of Europe. I proposed this to FoxeR as well when I DM'd him. I said like probably 4 or 5 games on Europe, 1 on NA, and he's like, oh yeah, that's fine. I won't complain.
Okay. Well, they might just be in habit from you know, other tournaments.
Okay, yeah, like I think if it's like Netherlands, France, Germany, like anything that's very Western Europe, I'm like, okay, we can go back and forth. But it's not that Ashbringer has like 5 ping to Europe, you know, he's actually gonna have a decent amount of ping as well. And since especially a lot of the Americans on the East Coast, they say Europe is totally fine, I kind of prefer Europe. But we can do NA for the second game. I'll just let them know. Oh.
That's fair.
I'll just type in. Alright, game 2, guys, is going to be played on Dragon Skills. Excellent first scrap between these two. I do think FoxeR is going to switch it up. I think that was kind of a one-off, a special one. Hope that it worked out, and definitely didn't win because of the opening, didn't win because of his build order. Just won because he microed well, and he made some correct decisions in the late game. But I have the feeling we're going to see a much more aggressive FoxeR here in game 2.
I do hope that it's different, just for the sake of, again, that best of development. That's why I like the 3cc. Again, it didn't really end up giving him a particularly big, powerful power spike, but I still like what it kind of sets up. You know, Ashbringer is not questioning what's going to happen. I forgot that started us off in the last game. FoxeR delivering that game with the big old console in his face.
I wonder what the big old console means. It must be the Warcraft 3 one, right?
Yeah, I've actually never heard of that one, so I've never seen it.
Okay. He says I'm not quite sure what causes that bug or if I can fix it on my side. It's all good. We try again. No worries.
The last UI bug that I remember is the pink bug.
Yeah, I've had that one as well. I actually had that once while playing in the caster tournament offline against Yogo, and I was like, it's not a big deal. And Foxy says no, it's a giant neon one. Alright, well, I'm really not familiar with that one, but I had once one with indeed very red, where it was supposed to be blue, it was pink. I was like, no big deal, I'll display. And then 3.5 minutes in, I got Ravager rushed of like 17 drones, and I was absolutely fuming. I was like,
It's like, this is fine until I start getting frustrated, and then it's not fine.
yeah, exactly. I wasn't happy with it, but I was like, this is not a big deal. But then I have one battery, one Zealot, and 3 Ravagers show up with corrosive bombs. Like, you know what? It is a big deal. Never doing this again.
My cat commonly sleeps right next to my, I don't have a big desk. Like, this desk is actually so much better if my cat was here, but now mine's not as big as this. And I'll just lay up against my mouse, and at first I'll kind of be like, this is fine, have some trouble microing my SCVs or something. But then I lose the Reaper, and I'm like, okay, that's enough. Go away, cat.
Alrighty, guys. Big Brain Bouts number 31 already. Every one of these editions had $500 on the line, besides the special anniversary edition, but we don't even count that in those 31 editions. So it's been Friday night video gaming on this channel for a very long time at this point, and that's obviously all because of Basilisk. They're pretty damn awesome. Not just to me or Sarah or Rainer or Trigger, but I think to a lot of people in the scene at this point. In the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of the man who's trying to win his second best of 5 in the Big Brain Bouts. Our American Terran player taking the 1-0 lead. It's FoxeR.
And in the top left of Dragon Scales, we do have the teal Protoss Ashbringer, the team USPTU.
I thought it was just Starcom, no? I think he's in Starcom.
He might have changed. No. Wait, yes. He's on 2 teams.
Sick.
Yeah.
Hey, that's kind of like me, you know?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, I don't know what the other one is. Maybe just like a local clan or something?
Could also
combination with it?
Could be a meme. Could be like how Showtime is in Team Stormgate, even though he's in Big.
Yeah. My favorite one is definitely Clem Lem, though. Clem.
Yeah. But I think he had to leave, and he had to actually represent Team Liquid.
That makes sense. I don't think I've seen him with it for a while, but that actually does make sense. That,
FoxeR was in Malem as well.
Oh yeah. Well then, one of the Lost players was too, right?
In the previous series? No.
Yeah, because that's what reminded me. Benefit was in Clanman, I think. Or no,
he
Benefit
was Sidestorm Gaming. It was probably just FoxeR on the European server. No, Saver was in X-Beer.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I just completely merged 4 players basically together in my mind. So.
It's okay, ZombieGrub. You're in the Netherlands. We allow it.
Thanks, bad. It's off to the White Claw that I've drunk 2 sips out of. It's just right to my head nowadays.
They hit different over here.
Yeah, obviously. They told me that if I moved to Colorado, I would get trained in drinking a lot, and it was the opposite. Lie.
We've got a much quicker factory this time around for our man FoxeR. That's kind of what I expected. I really think that the Babylon build was a one-off, something he just wanted to throw in there. Ashbringer probably is not going to switch it up a whole lot, as this Reaper should have been dead there. I'm not a big fan of pulling probes to deal with an SCV or a scouting probe or a Reaper in this case, but if the Reaper is literally in the middle of your mineral line, I think it's very acceptable to just grab 6 probes, surround it, and get the kill and move on with your life.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, depending on what type of person you are, you push your glasses up knowingly for either one, right? You're like, well, actually, if you kill it, then the Terran's really uncomfortable. Other guy's like, well, actually, the mineral loss is not worth it.
No, I definitely don't think you want to do it as a maybe, but this one was super deep in the middle of 8-9 probes with a stalker on the left. Like, that would have been a very quick, smooth, easy kill. I don't think you lose more than 15 or 20 minerals. I think on a moment like that, you do want to grab the probes for a split second.
Yeah. Probably just not, necessarily thinking about it. You don't usually prep for it. But we do now have the builds fleshed out. Ashbringer going into the Blink, FoxeR going into a simple medevac drop, and getting the additional scout in, as well as potential for harassment, of course. One Henley and one Reaper could grab up to probably 2 probes, I'd guess. Not even. Yeah, they got 1.
Yep, just a single one there. So this was actually a very solid defense, because that grenade was perfect. And if Ashbringer would have gone for some sort of a weird build where he didn't have a 3rd gateway unit pop out, you actually would have been in serious trouble. Because then your second Stalker is so far behind. The Reapers and Hellions are quicker, but crisis averted. However, the next crisis is always around the corner. That's the beauty of this matchup, ZombieGrub. And I'm completely neutral, of course. But we have a medevac with 2 Widow Mines flying to the other side of the map. And I really hope for our man Ashbringer that he's going to defend this properly.
It actually is one of my... It is my favorite matchup. It's been that way for a few years. The action is usually non-stop, even when you have someone more defensive than the other. Yikes. That was not going to be good. Blink not done, though. But medevac might be able to come in back to the natural in the future.
Stalkers can get shots off here, no?
Yes, right there, but I think... Is there really no perfect spot? There is no perfect spot. Damn.
Nope, I don't think
Unlucky.
there is there. I don't think there is. So that's big, by the way. We were talking about like, oh, you shouldn't take too much damage. Well, Ashbringer took absolutely 0 damage there. Not even lost mining time. There is no better feeling.
There is not. I suppose perhaps if there was a 4-gate on the way and FoxeR had lost that and didn't have a tank set up, that would be the best feeling. But actually it wasn't a 4-gate. It was a 3-gate against some conservative play here from Ashbringer into the double additional gases. 3rd base, especially now that he's got the map control. FoxeR has prepared his defenses for the case of a 4-gates, even though he did get that secondary scout and saw that it wasn't one. But still might lose the Raven. That would have been pretty bad. Repair that up, please.
A nice save there by Ashbringer, because his observer obviously otherwise would have been in a bit of trouble, but the Stalkers were nearby, and I think he did about as good as he could have done there. Was just not going to be able to get that Raven. But yeah, Ashbringer, I don't think I've ever seen him go for Gateway Blink Stalker. I feel like if he ever goes for Stalker aggression, it's going to be something extreme, like the 6-gate or the 7-gate even, where it's like, okay, we're really all in. You really want to blink into the Terran main base. When it comes to like the max spec style of play, where it's like, oh, 4 gates, blink Stalker, let's blink all over the place, he just doesn't really do that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, FoxeR, and maybe not in that deep of knowledge of Ashbringer's play, again, has set up, like, just in case it's a 4-gate. I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's, again, not one of those things where it's such a hardcore pivot that coming back into the game is super awkward. But it obviously can limit some options for Terran players when you have that fear of the 4-gate. Max Pack's potentially doing a 4-gate changes the way that Clem automatically plays against them, right? So there's that to consider. In this case, obviously a push out with a Raven, Bio, and even a few tanks. Okay, leaves one at home. It's still scary for Ashbringer. Talk about the interference matrix still being a very big deal. This particular type of attack around 7 minutes being one of the more difficult things for Protoss to deal with nowadays.
Yep, but Ashbringer deals with this almost all day, every day, because everybody builds a Raven, and he just loves going for quick Colossus. And I like this offensive army positioning, because if a Matrix would have gone down there, he could have just force-filled it. I gotta say, the kiting was pretty clean there as well, with the Stalkers in a perfect vertical line, and just making it a bit easy for him to get a few shots off. Did lose track, though, of the double drop that's going to unload in the corner of his main base. It seems that he is sort of expecting it, wondering if it's going to happen, and it is actually happening, as we have a couple of Zealots running into the natural as well. But FoxeR should be able to deal with this. Ashbringer, how much damage are we going to take against this double drop? This could get gnarly.
Is that a double stim? It gets healed up. Combat shields also kicks in as the drop is happening. So I was honestly worried one Colossus would suddenly take out half of this drop, but the drop continues on. 20 probes go down with the help of something over on that 3rd base as well. And no Stalkers in the main base means an escape is actually completely possible. And now Ashbringer is gonna look for some revenge, move across the map, but I don't know if he can break FoxeR on 2 bases. FoxeR moving out at potentially the exact wrong moment.
Yeah, no, this is actually what Ashbringer needs. He wants to see FoxeR trying to take this natural right now. If I was FoxeR, I'd just be more than happy with all the damage I've just done and be like, you know what, I'm going to take this base a little bit later. But Fox says, nope, I believe in my army. I think my army is good enough, and I don't want to see a delay. Might actually change his mind right now, and instead of taking the triangle, he can just take the base at 6 o'clock, and there's really nothing wrong with it.
No, it takes so long for the Protoss army to safely move over to the left side. They're not going to move through the Terran army in the tank's position, so they got to go all the way around. And yeah, it's going to net you some type of income, if not just actually be totally fine as a third base, which does seem to be the latter as Ashbringer pulls back, which I think he has to. I don't think there was actually a moment past that point in which FoxeR had seen the army incoming, was already sieged up. But now it's a very difficult game for Ashbringer. He just took that damage, was unable to return it, and we know that FoxeR actually has some pretty darn good macro in the late game. So if Ashbringer's thinking like, well, maybe I'll get the benefit the longer the game goes, FoxeR did show a real suave is the word I'm going to use because I can't think of another one. Intelligent swap over into late game Terran territory. So that's something that Ashbringer gotta be scared of.
Yeah, and I'm still not even that worried for Ashbringer. Like, if this was a different Protoss, I would be worried, but I've seen this man make miracles happen over low probe count time and time again. You give him a couple of Colossus, and most of the time he's Gucci, but he does really need to stop taking damage from these random run-bys or drops, as at least Zealots are finding a few probes on the other side of the map. Oh, the battery and the cannon setup here is quite lovely. In the end, it is 9 probes going down to us. We got the Widow Mine drop too in the third base, but at least the Zealots also got something done.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty nice. I'd say that's I mean, it's literally quite an even trade on the workers lost, but FoxeR already developing a fourth base is a little concerning, as Ashbringer is yet to move on. Did lose his Temple Archive, so no Archons coming in here, which would have been kind of feisty because we do not have Ghosts as of yet. It looks like FoxeR is once again wary of the counter, or perhaps has learned from the previous experience and is being wary of the counter. So bunkers are coming up this time, and since he has shown fourth base to us and unknowingly to Ashbringer, I think it does kind of make sense that he just want to basically turtle at this point.
Stop, Ashbringer. Like, this is not the kind of army that runs into 4 or 5 tanks that are already siege up. You really don't want to do that. We have a few more Zealots running into the third, but it's unlikely they get a whole lot done, since obviously there's nothing else happening. And FoxeR had all the time in the world to get ready for this. Even the Sunset Tower finishes up right now, so that's going to make Fox's life even a bit easier. It kind of just feels that Ashbringer needs to slow the game down a little bit. Maybe get another Robo, right? Like, I actually really liked how quickly he went into the triple Robo last game. Because it always makes me think of Zest, where it felt no matter how rich high-level Protoss players were, they were always like, double Robo. And Zest is like, no, if I'm rich and I've got money, 3 Robos, 4 Robos, all the Disruptors. And I honestly thought it's such a simple but awesome approach to being a 4 or 5 base Protoss. And I know Ashbringer is not that rich yet, but he's definitely rich enough to afford 1 more Robo.
It's also getting to that point where the Robo unit, the Disruptor in particular, might be the most important, but right now we got a bit of a battle. Ashbringer coming in here before the Planetary is done, giving him one of the better chances of taking this fight. FoxeR, however, stands his ground, goes after the Colossus once again with the SED pull, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of bio left over, Roddy, and that Planetary might finish, but then it would have nothing defending it, so it cancels and skedaddles.
Now that's a +3 Protoss army right there, and Colossus with +3 against Morales with +1. Even they start doing alrighty then at that point. Honestly, great micro by Ashbringer. Phenomenal moment for him to show up. Not too many EMPs available there. Archons were a problem, and obviously the Planetary wasn't done yet. Like, this is that Ashbringer kind of magic that I was talking about. He's just very comfortable with these armies. He's got so much experience with it. And no matter how many probes this man loses in the early mid-game, if you give him 3 Colossus, he will always have a chance.
And it was FoxeR also being perhaps a little brazen, didn't necessarily have to move that quickly over into a 4th base, and then he didn't really realize where the Protoss army was coming in from. He saw an awkward Immortal and thought, great, I can start the fight off strong, which, you know, is kind of true, but then it felt like FoxeR was missing all of those extra ingredients that were just literally 10 seconds away, right? He would have moved his tanks, he would have gotten his Ghosts in the front lines to immediately EMP, he would have had that Planetary done with the SCVs repairing, and then there's no way that Ashbringer brings that, but perfect timing there from the Protoss.
Yeah, it's a real shame to have so many tanks and have not a single tank participate in a battle like that. That clearly was an important one. Hero Marine might even call it a game-deciding fight, but, you know, the game is not totally over yet, so perhaps not game deciding, but Ashbringer obviously kind of bringing the momentum back to his side. He's going to be ultra happy with how this game is going. 12 gateways, still those ZombieGrub. I just have one wish. Drop another robo. Drop 2 more robos for all I care. But give me some more robos, because with gateway units alone, if the Terran army ever gets 3-3 and you get tanks and sensor towers, gateway units are just not that hot.
Yeah, that's very true. FoxeR does have an orbital as his 4th now. Made that decision when he brought it back, which means it's vulnerable a bit later on. An Archon drop at 14 minutes is not too common, but it is adding some effectiveness. Did that Archon freak out for a second? That was weird. And it's Warp in. That is a lot of damage in the main base, as well as attacking on the front lines with the upgrade. Superiority still intact. Ashbringer looks to end the game, but perhaps has made a fatal mistake, underestimating moving up the choke, up the ramp, into the EMPs. But hey, the damage is being done on the main base.
Yeah, that was not the prettiest fight, but it's okay, because the Warp Prism is indeed dealing all the damage. eBay dead, Orbital dead, Armory dead. That is everything that Ashbringer was looking for. And now he's actually going to be able to break this base as well. He even gets the sensor tower. And I don't know if you're familiar with this one, ZombieGrub, but exclamation mark perfect in my chat will give you a little speech about the sensor tower.
How great it is. I know your opinion on the sensor tower. Surprisingly opinionated. If they're watching the game, well, I was gonna say end, but it's actually still kind of close in supply. If FoxeR takes literally everything and runs across the map, there could be something. But before he decides to do that, I was gonna say, Dot came around and asked us to sign something, and then Balance complain as well, right? I don't know what you complained about. Maybe
3 Rex.
towers?
3 Rex.
Ah, okay. But I don't know, especially like 8 years ago, I think Marine Lord called me out for being like favored towards a race. And I was like, I took that to heart. And I've literally tried my best to like completely empty bias out of my mind. Obviously it doesn't always work, but I literally couldn't think of a damn thing. So I wrote the thing that's going to trigger Twitch chat the most. StarCraft 2 is a perfectly balanced game, guys.
Most people in my chat kind of agree, but we've got our memes. Like, I don't actually think that 3 Rex is in balance, but I do think that 3 Rex games kind of suck because they just end things so often, so early, and it's so many units, and if you scout it too late, like you've casted a lot of StarCraft, ZombieGrub. Don't tell me that you haven't casted a whole bunch of 3 Rex games first team and it's over. Like, that just sucks. Nobody likes that.
No, it's very true. And obviously we can all talk about game design and what's fun and what isn't. But here's that moment I was kind of referring to. FoxeR takes everything to move across the map. However, just those 30 seconds we were talking about led to Ashbringer starting this fight off with a 20 supply lead. So that was not it, unfortunately. But good on FoxeR for trying.
Yep, the 25 Zealots. That's obviously when they come in really handy, especially against the heavy Marauder army or FoxeR, the heavy tank army. GG gets Skull, and the Protoss ties things up as we head back to the European server. So that's actually kind of cool for you guys to see as well. The American wins on the European server, the European wins on the American server. It's not all about ping. I do think Fox is going to be kicking himself a little bit because he had a great start, right? He had a phenomenal drop in the main base, and if you kill 20 probes and then a few more with that Widowmine drop, this game kind of belonged to FoxeR. He just took an unfortunate fight near the planetary before it was done and without the support of all his tanks.
It was really before he was the best setup possible, and that really is one of the more painful ways to lose a game. Because it's not even just that you were already ahead; it's that you already knew that you were about to skip forward 2 steps, right? It's like you rolled the 6 instead of the 2, and you're like, oh, I just get to jump way forward. So you're already feeling it. You're like 4 bases, lots of bio, safe enough to go ahead and make that transition to Liberators, which he showed some weakness to in the last game. And then, especially with that forward 4th base, right? Then it's just like a simple hop over to the other guy's base. Like, he really would have probably lined up to be perfect on top of the fact that he was already ahead because of the probe kills. And then that's when you lose it all. And you know you've lost it all, too. You know that it's going to be very difficult to make that comeback happen.
What did you mean exactly when you said you rolled a 6, but you were looking for a 2? What is that a reference to?
No, like you roll a 6 die in like Candyland, you know?
What?
6-sided die? A 6-sided die? What?
In Candyland? What does this mean? I'm lost.
Have you ever played a board game where it's just as simple as you roll the dice and you move forward that many dice, that many?
Yes, yeah, with Jax, my nephew. I played those games with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of getting a 2 and being like, oh, I just moved forward a little bit, you roll a 6 and you're like, aha, I'm way far ahead of you guys.
Okay. No. The only dice that I roll are at the craps table. I'm looking for that 7 out. I'm a hater. I've learned from Mr. Bitter a long time ago that there is the hater strategy, where everybody hopes for the pass line to stay on and you don't want to roll a 7. There's also the opposite, where you play the hater strat, where you basically hope to roll a 7 because that's when you get paid. And the first time I went to Vegas, I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool strategy, Ben. So I did it. And I had a few people at the table. And basically they were betting on the numbers. And I rolled a 7. And I was hoping for a 7. So I was like, yes! And one American man looked at me. And sorry, Basilisk, after curse. He looked at me and said, fuck you. 20 years in Vegas and I've never seen this. He was incredibly upset about me celebrating the 7 out. So I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't play the hater strat anymore.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, making people angry. I remember when we got, you know what, I'll tell the story after the intros. In the top right, we do have stars, Ashbringer.
The man packed up his chips and he left. He said, I've never seen this and I've been here for 20 years. I was like, all right, it is what it is. In the bottom left side, we are looking at the main base of the American Terran, playing 2 beautiful games of StarCraft so far, but we're still all tied up. Here he is, Milem, FoxeR.
First of all, so Candyland doesn't use dice. I thought of the first simple board game that came to mind. But definitely ask Fear Dragon about his opinions about Candyland.
Okay.
Tell him it's the bestest game ever designed, and you love playing it with your nephew, and it'll be great. Anyways, but then the other thing is, I don't. Were you there when we were in Korea and we went to the casino?
Yes.
I think you were.
Yeah, with Tasteless and the guy from the Handsome Nerd shop. Yes.
Yeah, you were doing other games for a little while, so I don't know if you joined us at the blackjack table, but it was like all of the foreigners at this blackjack table, and not just the American ones, the Australian and the European that were the casters, but also I believe a Chinese guy, because actually Koreans can't gamble if they don't have a secondary passport. So, anyways. We're playing and we're just having fun, you know, we're losing little bits of money, but the whole, you know, it's the experience, guys. No one's looking to win. And apparently this Chinese guy was just getting more and more angry with us because we weren't playing according to the table. So we were screwing over his chances as well, which I don't really get, but he actually apparently got really frustrated, went up to go to the bathroom. Maynard went with, or not with him, but went at the same time, and apparently he yelled at Maynard for like 2 minutes, or Tasteless, like one of them, and it was all in Chinese. They didn't understand, but they kind of figured out what it was. So people be crazy.
Yeah, that was during GSL vs. the World. That was actually a fun night. Just all of us going out. Good times. Alrighty, we've got FoxeR trying to make his men Clem proud. I often say there's not a single best of 5 that I cast of Clem where he doesn't go for a Hellion drop. Now, obviously, normally you do it Reaper Fast Expand or Marine Fast Expand, and then we proxy the starport. But there is also the 1-base version, which hits even quicker. But for the first time, Ashbringer is actually going to go for a Stargate. And an Oracle here can honestly come in very, very handy for him.
Yeah, that's... it's just always how it's positioned, though, isn't it? So
yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, the setup's beautiful. The units seem to be perfectly in position, and then the poor Protoss moves them out of position for, you know, half a second, and the Hellions do all the damage. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm waiting on. This build, this 1/1/1 Hellion drop, it almost never loses. I tried to use it earlier against Hearthstone guys, because that happened earlier. Mine didn't work, but that makes more sense. I have a lot of faith in this one.
Alrighty, let's see what Ashbringer can do. Where's that first Oracle gonna go? That's really what it all comes down to. This rally point actually kind of spells disaster for our Protoss, as it's heading in the wrong direction. And this is not the 2-base Hellion drop, but it's the 1-base opening. Phoenix is a follow-up, but look at the minimap. Oh, this is going to hurt. Want to play the guessing game? I say 16 probes will die.
All right, I'm gonna go with 20.
Yeah, that's a good guess. Oh, okay, and in a weird way, he got lucky that he just evacuated a whole bunch, but that Oracle is so far out of position. It's not that bad yet. We've got 11. Obviously, the Hellion should be able to get a few more shots off. Are we going to get 16? Sweet 16. No, why don't you shoot? Oh, my goodness. Robbery. That was 16 if I've ever seen 16, ZombieGrub.
That was supposed to be 16, but the universe conspired against Roddy yet again. So,
The
yeah,
Oracle,
that's
by
very
the way,
unfortunate.
sorry, I am getting super... Okay, the Oracle does die, but the Oracle did very casually get 7 SCV. So, in the end, we ended up losing 15 probes. So, it was one off. But, obviously, the Oracle killing 7 SCVs against a Terran that opened up off 1 CC for a pretty long time makes this, in a weird way, still kind of alright for Ashbringer. He's got a 5 worker lead.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's a kind of all right. It's if we look at the actual numbers of their income, FoxeR still had a bit higher, but now it's kind of going back to Ashbringer, who's double pumping those probes and probably chrono boosting them. But then you also got to keep in mind, okay, where's their technology at? How much does their follow-up have the potential to do damage? And right now,
Ooh.
Ashbringer with a couple of Phoenix and Adepts coming across the map has more potential to do further damage.
Yeah, he's got indeed more potential. As we're going to lift the Cyclone as well. We're not going to kill the Cyclone, but these Adepts, 3 is obviously the magical number to one-shot a Marine, to one-shot an SCV. Oh, actually, the more I look at this, the more I like it for Ashbringer. Especially because I know Ashbringer. He's going to drop that Robo Bay immediately. So he's not going to find himself in that scenario where it's like, oh, he's got no answer for stimmed Marines because he doesn't have a Colossus or no splash damage. The man will always have splash damage. I actually think it looks very good for our Russian Protoss.
One thing that I give FoxeR is that he's going up to a very fast double drop. So he actually is going to be able to hit with stim, no combat shields, but with stim somewhere, potentially before those Colossus go, right? Like the Colossus pop out, they kill those Marines instantly, not a big deal. If the Marines unload out of sight of the Phoenix and then rush into the natural mineral line, then that could absolutely be a way back in for FoxeR.
Cyclone is very exposed this time around. I actually think maybe the Phoenixes could have gone for it. But obviously Ashbringer doesn't know where those Marines were hiding. Should be able to lift those Marines. Marines are light armored units. Yeah, go ahead.
He's just missed the army move out. I mean, there's a shield battery and a handful of units. And I don't know if FoxeR is going to risk it and maybe hop up into that main base, but one of these bases could be extremely vulnerable.
I mean, Ashbringer needs to know that, wait a minute, you've got no units at home. Like, even if he missed the move, like, I would like a recall right now, because you have to know that you're about to be attacked. That battery is going to be very exposed. That seems like a double stim, though, on the side of FoxeR. And that really hurts if you don't have combat shield.
Yeah, I believe, I do... I don't want to say for sure, because I haven't been paying that close attention, but it does seem like FoxeR has a little bit of an overstimming problem. I actually think that's one of the more common faults of some of the better, like North American players, I suppose. Like, they're still, they got the builds, they're really catching up on the macro and the micro, but they still have that eagerness to press that T button.
Well, a couple of Marines did manage to make it out, and obviously there was some damage there, and that's maybe good enough for FoxeR to at least be content with the position that he's in. But the next time around, Colossus will be out. We have 2 Immortals as well, and I especially think that that's something we often look past at, right? It's like, oh, Protoss army, somewhat even supply, but having 2 Immortals this early on is so freaking sweet, because until you have Vikings, Marauders cannot stim forward and gun down a Colossus if there are 2 Immortals standing on the ground. That's just not a thing.
Yeah, that's going to be a little more difficult to do. Well, FoxeR's kind of faster 16 Marine drop push didn't really find that success, which I think it would require a little bit of luck anyways, but it did not. Maybe still continuing on with a relatively good economy now. I mean, one thing that Ashbringer's style of play doesn't do is, I think, make like a tremendous leap forward over to that third base, right? You are stuck, but very safe on 2 bases. Yeah, witnessing what's gonna go down here. This is a bit troublesome if Ashbringer really does intend to take this third base. He could be pulled apart a little bit too much.
I would have loved it if FoxeR would have just YOLO stimmed into the natural there with the 8 Marines right when the army moved towards the top left. I think that would have been a perfect moment. I do really believe in the Protoss army here. Even if FoxeR is up 20 supply, a lot of it is at home. Marines are not going to do well against the Colossus. Phoenixes do need to be careful though, but I think it's totally fine for Ashbringer to take this base at the moment. He's safe because his army is just powerful. This is an army that works very well together.
Yeah, he would have had to, I think, really panicked hard to actually misplay that one, but it definitely has happened. You know, that Colossus and the natural gets, it's on the same Colossus hotkey as everyone else, for instance, and then gets dragged over to the third base. But, yep, FoxeR did not pull the trigger on that attack on the right side, wasn't finding much wiggle room on the left, regroups, makes sure to have 2 things happening at once at all times. Good old Terran motto, well, really StarCraft 2 motto. Now we'll see if this can now find some damage, as FoxeR is on 3 bases now. I mean, pretty well set up. Upgrades actually going to be favored eventually for FoxeR, but right now even.
Yeah, it's a fun game, right? I love things go Fox's way, but I still think that the Protoss army is really quite a bit more powerful than the Terran army. Now, of course, you still need good control, but that's something that Ashbringer does often have. Widow Mine still! Actually, not the greatest shot there. It deals even a little bit of friendly fire. I do believe we have a little drop in the main base, but 8 Marines with a gun obviously can do some serious work if the Protoss army is far out of position. And Ashbringer is just going to go for the recall. It seems that FoxeR didn't quite pick up on that immediately, as he was busy trying to save as many buy units out there. Now this is like an old school PvT where, of course, if nothing happens, like a minute from now, as the Phoenix has obviously gone down that medevac, guys, if nothing happens for the next minute and a half, it's a great game for FoxeR. But this Protoss army is a real problem for the army that FoxeR is currently working with.
And I do feel like these two have had somewhat similar dynamics in all of their games, really, where I just like, according to the last few games, I expect Ashbringer to move across the map, really cause some problems, and then FoxeR barely holds on and then gets to a decent late game, you know, so on and so forth. But we are witnessing a kind of pseudo damage trade, I suppose, right, where FoxeR is not base trading, but does have a decent army at the natural of the Protoss. It lifts all of his bases, realizing it is going to turn into a full-on base trade, and well, now things get really difficult to call.
Yep, this is going to be very strange, because obviously Ashbringer is going to lose a bunch of probes. One of the pilots got sniped, so the Zealots didn't get warped in, but he did have a decent amount of money to warp in non-stop. He's even deciding to send 2 Phoenix at home. He's then going to send a few more, but I think the Zealots will do alrighty here. They'll keep the Terran busy, because the beauty of Protoss is that Zealots are always good in small numbers. You don't have to look at them, they're going to do their thing. But obviously, if you want to get value out of the Marines and Marauders, you need to pay attention. There are Widow Mines here, though, and those Widow Mine shots are fantastic.
Yeah, that just made up for the non-existent Widow Mines in the earlier fights, because FoxeR was too busy running away. Also, some nice layering of the army on the high ground. Marauders up there first to get the attacks from the Colossus to prompt them, I believe, and then the Marines behind them to chase after Phoenix. They got a little too adventurous, which we know they did, right over those Widow Mines. Ashbringer in a more difficult spot. The army supply looks good for him, and it might even get better if these 2 medevacs are actually cleaned up. The Archons have short range, but just enough to take care of the full medevac. So yeah, the supplies and army are a little concerning for FoxeR, but if he could play this rest of the game out, might not be too bad. Over 2 medevacs, a stimmed army. It's going to have to stim again. Widow Mine's already popped off and did some friendly fire. Yeah. Well, now FoxeR's back on 1 base.
No, FoxeR is in trouble. Those Widow Mines dealing some friendly fire as well really does not help. There's only 3 medevacs remaining, but I believe 2 of them are still out on the map. No, they're here, but they're ultra low on HP. 1 medevac is still chilling out. And Ashbringer is like, wait a minute, didn't you have a 3rd base? And there is a whole city of SCVs that are shaking in their boots, hoping that these terrifying aliens won't find them, but the aliens will find them. And the humans are going to have to run. This is looking rough for FoxeR.
Yeah, absolutely. Being unable to successfully break out is going to be the major problem. Going through your own main choke into your own natural choke against this Protoss army, it's just a little bit too much to ask for. When his supply was behind by about 15 to 20, if he had everything collected together with better upgrades, there's a chance, but that never happened. It was never the perfect engagement for the Terran.
This really is an Ashbringer game. Like, down 15 workers, but a good old Protoss army. Like... He just makes magic happen. Has lost his natural, but it doesn't really seem to care. Couple of Zealots having a field day, slicing up a few SCVs to the bottom side of the map. The SCVs have now migrated towards the 3 o'clock position, and they're making a full tour around ancient Sisterin, but eventually, I guess we're going for the SCV flank, ZombieGrub?
Oh, I wish. I think that would actually be brilliant. So unfortunately, it's going to be coming in too late. Widow Mine's not affecting this particular battle, and Ashbringer will win game number 3. It didn't quite go along to the story that I was setting up there, but it did happen in the classic, you know, FoxeR was looking to be in a good position, and then Ashbringer had the best army, like you said. So yep. It's the way the series is going.
Alright, I guess we'll do game 4 on the... I actually wrote to FoxeR that we'll do 3 games on Europe, 2 games on NA. So Europe, NA, but I'm not always sure if they're down to switch. But Ashbringer says it's okay. He obviously won the previous game on the American server anyway, so we're going to switch over one more time. It's a fun series between these two where, in a weird way, this could have been a 3-0 either way. Like, both of them had potential to win the games that they lost, and... It's this one, very evenly matched, and it's a real Ashbringer one, especially that final one where down a whole bunch of probes, but he's good at keeping the key units alive, and Colossus are already a problem for only bio, but you know, sometimes like, okay, if the Marauders are in high enough numbers, but if you then also have 2 Immortals from the very beginning and you just never lose them, it's so freaking difficult for a Terran unless they get Vikings to engage an army like that.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's I guess that's something that just like hasn't really happened, like a very simple Terran game where it's just a build up to like a solid Viking count. I mean, really thinking about the whole series, you know, how many Vikings have we seen? Less than 6?
Yeah, definitely not too many. We had a bunch on Dragon skills, and obviously we saw a few on Babylon, but yeah, maybe not too big of a believer. But I think going for a couple quick double starports to just crank out Vikings, because Ashbringer really is a man who loves the Colossus. Can't go without it. That's basically his default opening. Couple Blinky Boys, couple Colossus. This game did open up Stargate. Maybe that's because of the 1 base opening he scout. Maybe his logic is expand, I play Blink into Colossus, but if it's a 1 base, I want to make sure I can figure it out quickly, and I play Stargate in that regard.
Yeah. Could very well be. FoxeR has got he's really trying to change it up, but he once again has to change it up here to bring back the series. It's also unfortunate that he did take such a bad fight in the middle of the map in that last game, because it was one of those fights where, you know, if he was ready for it, Concave, Widowmine's Burrow, it's a lot more complicated, but because he was on the run, he literally lost all of his Widowmines, and the one that shot didn't help him at all. So that really could have been very different if he had just successfully evacuated completely and entirely, or had maybe stood his ground like in a slightly better way. Might have had enough army to then contest his own natural, which, you know, the games always get weird at that point. It's never easy to call, but certainly the fact that he had a lower army supply trying to retake his natural against Colossus beams, yeah, it wasn't pretty.
We've got Naruto in the chat saying Saver will play. He's like 193 years old from Brood War. Saver has already played Naruto. And Saver 130, and he's born in the same year as me, so F you for that one. Let's go ahead and hop into Game 4 of these two, as it's a very fun and entertaining PvT series between this man taking the 2-1 lead, busting out the Stargate opening in Game 3. But I expect him to go back to the Blink Stalkers and Colossus here in Game 4. Hailing from Russia, this is Ashbringer.
In the bottom right of Gresfon, really trying to change up his openers, but still behind in this series, he is FoxeR.
Second appearance for FoxeR in the Big Brain Bouts. Made his first appearance maybe 10 weeks ago. Had a 3-1 victory over Hydra, who is a Dutch Protoss, who I would really say is pretty much equal to Ashbringer. But Ashbringer is just a very motivated young man, and he plays a bit different. Where a lot of the other Protosses around 5'7", 5'8", are often pretty aggressive monkeys, and they want to make stuff happen, which makes them vulnerable at home. Ashbringer can really be a pain for Terrans to play against, because he just sits there and he expands late, so he doesn't give the same openings to the Terrans as a lot of the other Protoss players do. While they want to be greedy or they want to be aggressive, like, it's just very calm. Gives me like a Zoka vibe where he just sits there and strokes his beard, where it's like, I've got a battery, I've got a cannon, we've got some Colossus, let's take the game from there.
Yeah, I was going to say before you made that reference that it feels like an older school Protoss, which, you know, I think you could really take all the time you want arguing about whether or not it's the best, as people certainly do. You know, is the aggressive Protoss style the really way to go? Could stats ever come back into this game because defensive Protoss isn't as popular, as good as it used to be? Whatever. But the truth is, especially if we're not talking about the absolute pinnacle of the players, the literally best Protoss versus the literally best Terran, that kind of offset the unsettling nature of just like different styles. Yeah, it can really screw someone up. You know, FoxeR might be way better even. He might have just already completely 3-0'd Ashbringer if Ashbringer was a more typical Protoss player with the same set of macro and micro skills. But it's very different if he's going to play this very, Wings of Liberty almost style.
And it goes back to what we said in the previous series, the PvP. It's just better to play stuff that you're very good at, that you're comfortable with, than the stuff that everybody else says that you're good. But if that's out of your comfort zone in a game like StarCraft 2, especially once you get a bit higher up on the ladder, you're just gonna get punished for that stuff immediately. Like, there are many moments where I know that the perfect army would be 3 or 4 Tempests, a couple High Templars, a few Disruptors, and all of that. But that's really hard to control, and it's really hard to get value out of that. So it's a lot easier to get 10 carriers and a few Disruptors and take the game from there.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to see a game similar to that first one, though. I mean, these all have actually had some really fun moments, but that first game, it was a real slabanaka. The Reaper does go down prior to scouting. But it just, you know, it ended on such a... it didn't end on a surprising note, I suppose, but it had so many surprising notes. And we did see the full gambit of a TVP, which I thought both of them were playing fairly well. But we'll see if we get that on Gressvon, which does tend to give us the macro game, so I'm kind of expecting it. Ashbringer moving on to the Twilight Council opener yet again, possibly much like his second game, I believe.
Yep.
3 gates into the slow third base.
Yeah, on Dragon Skills, where obviously he had a dream start. Like, the Reaper got a bit too much done, but sniping a medevac that's carrying 2 Widow Mines, and you take absolutely 100% zero damage, not even a little propel. That's supposed to be a free win, right? Terran players will tell you that you can never win if you have a start that bad. And even Protoss players who don't like to make too many bold statements about the early game of PvT will tell you, yeah, that's actually pretty sweet. Like, it's hard to lose. Because we do have 2 extra gateways. Okay, I thought like 1 more finished up. But that's just the standard 3 gate, blink, robo. We're going to take some gases. And he's just going to do what he does best.
Yeah, I always love the gateway math when there's producing some that are gateways been out
that's
and some
strict.
that's already done.
And then sometimes like some of them are morphing and the other ones are not, and you go back and forth. You're like, wait, it was 1, 3, and you look like a dumbass because you're like, oh my god, this guy cannot count. It's like 2 + 2, and he's failing it. It's like, no guys, it's changing in the structures and production tab, I promise.
Yeah, that's my favorite as well. I really feel very smart when I do that. That's like, I've actually gotten into the habit now of literally just waiting because I'm just so like, or maybe someone can pick up on this very small detail where I literally go between the structures and production tab like 6 times, and then I say it. Oh no, not again.
Not again indeed. Well, at least it was only a single Widow Mine this time around, but that is still a straight up nightmare for FoxeR. Widow Mine and the medevac go down, and he gets nothing done. Didn't even get a great scout off, honestly. Maybe he already knows that it's once more going to be the gases and the Colossus follow up, but yeah, that's straight out of the Terran Nightmare book. I fear the worst now for FoxeR.
Yeah, the second game was kind of good for FoxeR, though. I know it ended in a loss for him, but it wasn't because of the medevac. There was the medevac, and then there was the 20 probes died, and then there was the defense of the planetary. So it was a bit of a game of catch in some ways.
For sure, but I also think that Ashbringer just made a big boo-boo in that game, right? Just not having any vision of the corner of his main base. And it seems that he's a man who learns from his mistakes rather quickly. Because if you take a look at the pylon placement, he's like, alright, what happened on Dragon Skills is not supposed to happen. And he's already creating way more vision for himself. He's even as an observer chilling there. So it's going to be very hard for FoxeR to find the same amount of success as he did on that map.
Yeah, as casters, we kind of have to always have the suggestion that something can go wrong, because there's plenty of times where it does. It's the pro gamers who can say, like, this is absolutely going to happen 100%, and when it doesn't, they go, yeah, but it was supposed to, and you're like, oh yeah, of course. But you're right, that was a particularly bad mistake, right? That's just straight up something that you're not capable of, or shouldn't be allowing to happen again. Not like improper marine micro or losing a single stalker because you were looking away for a hot second. I mean, that was potentially game-deciding mistake. It wasn't, but yeah. Ashbringer controlling a little bit of space around the third just to have that map presence, but we got ourselves that typical TVP macro game.
And obviously for everybody that just joined, we've got 2 more best of 5s after this, guys. And I honestly think both of them are very fun. One, honestly, a bit of a unique matchup. Harstem against Shem. Not sure what to expect. And that's, I feel like, a matchup you just don't get to see or cast very often, because they compete in different regions, which I think is a lot of fun. And then obviously the main event of the evening, that's the biggest match for $200, is going to be between Spirit and Lambo. Because Spirit, just like Ashbringer, he even came up to me in DreamHack ZombieGrub. He said, Rotti, are you mad with me? Why am I not playing BBB? It's been forever. I was like, no, Spirit, this is like a lot of people want to play. We've got a lot of top tier players out there, but I was like, all right, mate, first Friday after DreamHack, you're in. He's like, okay, nice, it's about time. So I think Spirit Lambo should obviously deliver too.
Sometimes when you explain them, I mean, like, I totally understand. I'm just, this is just a joke. I'm not blaming anyone. But sometimes the pro gamers kind of sound like, I don't know, like when we steal all the snacks from the green room before we leave, It's just like, oh my god, there's things to actually play. Please invite me. You're not inviting me? Why do you hate me? There's no snacks in the green room? Why? It's nice that everyone wants to play in the BBB,
No, for sure. I mean, it's obviously a great event for players. It's not one of the tournaments where they need to play 12 best of 5s to walk away with something. It's a single best of 5, and whether you win or lose, you always get something for it. And especially obviously in the main event, getting $50 for a single series that you've lost, I think that's a very sweet deal. And it makes sense that they want to play. I do feel, by the way, that Ashbringer kind of forgot charge in this game. Now, I'm not sure how much it's really going to hurt him as long as he's got extended turbulence, which he does. I want to say he's fine. The Raven auto turret harass is not getting too much done because of the battery and the cannon setup, but at least the Raven scouted the Dark Shrine. But yeah, it just feels that FoxeR is not going to be able to get a whole lot done. And if I see setups like this ZombieGrub, I don't know how you feel about it, but I almost don't want to see auto turrets go down in the main base. Like, save that energy. Drop a big anti-armor missile in the fight. Drop an interference matrix. It feels kind of pointless to potentially maybe kill 1 or 2 probes in a 9-minute game.
Yeah, I think you're right. Trying to see it from the player perspective, I think there's a little bit more to like, well, distraction elements, or honestly, if a Terran said, I figure at the late game we're not really going to get those spells off anyways, I'd kind of understand it. But especially the anti-armor missile, usually you can get that off even from a distance. It's a bit of the, I suppose, less awkward spell to use. But besides that, the Raven's going to stay where it is and all that good stuff. DT's once again trying to make some problems. Actually, FoxeR's been very good against DTs. He did, the attack in his main base with that giant Warp Prism warp in did help kill him. But even that was only Zealots and Archons. Feels like he's been excellent against DTs.
We've got a few Vikings. We've got 3 tanks, so there's absolutely potential for FoxeR in his army. I do think he should absolutely wait until he gets 2-2. Fighting without 2-2 is just going to hurt. He's already behind in upgrades. He's going to stay behind in upgrades, but at least get those 2 upgrades done, and he will be able to max out. We're going to get a second star point, so it's definitely not all doom and gloom for FoxeR. But we cannot once more take a game-deciding fight without the tanks, right? These tanks are going to be incredibly useful against the 18 Stalkers, 3 Immortals, and 3 Colossus.
It just doesn't feel like there's really a lot of benefits to attacking in the first place. If you see an opening, sure, but the opening is going to be kind of hard to find. This is not a particularly delicate army. It's one that a Terran could win against, but it's not something where, like relying on Disruptors and Stalkers, if you don't pay attention, you're out of the game. This has a little bit more chalk to it. So many Zealots, a handful of Immortals.
The real Ashbringer max out. 63 probes, 29 Zealots. Like, 31 Zealots. More Zealots. We need more Zealots. He has 2 more free supply. It's honestly kind of crazy. You think that just a couple of Widow Mines or even a few bunkers would really keep this army at bay. But I've counted this army out a few too many times where I'm like, this is not a good army to max out on. It's not a good army. And then the Zealots just go absolute berserker mode and they slice up everything that the Terran has to offer. But yeah, you look at this and you just feel like this can't be optimal.
If you look at it with the eyes of someone who watches pro gamers, absolutely. I know many Terrans out there are like, you kidding me? I lose to this all the time. But it is absolutely one of those compositions where if it's one of the better fights, the Terrans prepared, they also have decent upgrades, they're also preparing for the fight as you press the go button, it's not going to look very pretty. This army is actually not good against some of the best Terrans, right, with their control and their setups for engagements. That's why you do eventually see nothing but Blink Stalkers and Disruptors. So there's a reason. But one thing this army, I think, is good for is, again, not being pounced upon. It's a bit of a bully that actually kind of has a fragile ego, But we'll get into more of that after the fight. Ashbringer going to pull the trigger.
Yep, a couple of Zealots are going to lead the charge. Liberators will see trouble, and that's going to make it very difficult for the Protoss to get up this ramp. There's a whole bunch of EMP. There are no Disruptors to worry about. I really don't think Ashbringer should do this. He said, Roddy, watch me hold my beer. I'm going to do it. I refuse to believe that the Protoss can get the job done here. If it does, ZombieGrub, I'm going to say that Protoss is ridiculous. We do have a Warp Prism in the back, warping in even more Zealots, and it's honestly sort of kind of working.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I know a single upgrade sometimes make or break a game, but this actually was supposed to be one of the worst fights. It could have been slightly
18?
worse.
Okay, to be fair, he won the fight because he has warped in by now like 70 supply, right? Like it was 18 zealots and 18 more zealots. So we are warped in like 72 supplies since this fight started.
Oh, good save on the orbital, but it could have only been slightly better if FoxeR had his Liberators siege up slightly faster and an EMP slightly faster. Other than that, like the slightlys there, that actually was such an ingrained position for the Terran player. Ashbringer absolutely saying, hold my beer. That was crazy. And now just looking to win with the momentum. The Zealots are the cheapest things you can get, hoping to overwhelm the Terran army. But once the Terran army has those EMPs and has a choke on its side, these Zealots aren't going to look very pretty.
Yeah, I still don't believe. Like, obviously, more damage is being dealt, and I've made this mistake. I never believe until he actually wins. He does have that War Prism with 18 gateways backing all of it up. But we are closing in on +3. The EMP should be able to cover this entire Protoss army. I think Ashbringer should be kind of happy with the amount of damage he's done. Maybe he could have gone for this command center, but yeah, in a choke point against that much bio and that many ghosts, like there is just no way. But I really do want to give him kudos, man, because I feel like if I would take any of those fights, especially on the positions that he takes them, I don't know how he gets value out of it, but it must be the non-stop warp-ins where it's just like wave after wave, and it's not the Zealots that are dealing damage. It's the fact that the Terran needs to stim like 17 times in a row to win that fight. Maybe that's how it works. I don't know.
It also is the amount of time it takes to kill the darn things. So if this battle happens more on Ashbringer's side of the map, you know, FoxeR is also reinforcing with handfuls of units or getting time to siege up at home so he has someplace safe to retreat to. The panic as you realize you could be overwhelmed on your home turf and the production could be camped is considerable. But things will calm down. I would say that they calm down in favor of FoxeR, who now has 3/3 bio alongside those Liberators. But, you know, these games have been hard to call, hard to predict. But if it's like that first game, which it's getting increasingly closer to, yeah, I think FoxeR's in a very good position to win it.
Then I've done my job, as we do have a Widowmine getting a perfect shut off, by the way. All of the probes just getting together. Widowmine says thank you very much. 5 probes go down. But yeah, these games definitely have been tough to call. These two are a good match for one another. As Ashbringer is now even working on the plasma shields. Why not? As FoxeR maybe is realizing that his Widowmines have been able to get a surprising amount of shots off. And if there is one thing that Ashbringer does not have a lot of, it's cannons. And I would even say observers, right? Yeah, single observer in a 60-minute game. I find that crazy. I find this Widowmine drop crazy as well. I'm not exactly sure what we're doing here, ZombieGrub, but it is what it is.
Yeah, thinking he had a moment to return home. Thinking the army was out of position. Just, well, perhaps not thinking much about it. Either one, it did not work out. Was a big potential for probe damage, but it's still really the big story is about this main army with the Liberators potentially sieging up on Ashbringer's side of the map. Ashbringer absolutely had to respect the kind of the outcome of the last battle. He wasn't really in a position to continue forcing the issue, but to completely give up the map control against someone building Liberators, that's oftentimes a death sentence.
This is crazy, but Ashbringer is crazy. He just says, alright, I'm gonna do it again. Steps into all the Liberators, blinks forward. He's gonna try to gun them down one by one. The EMPs are big. But Ashbringer, it may look like an ugly fight, but he's got 18 gateways behind all of this. I wouldn't hate it if he runs the Colossus back. Like, it feels like these are the worst fights ever, and I think in a way they kind of are. But at least he saves the Colossus, and he's got those 18 gateways keeping him safe. But he's kind of playing this like he's Raynor playing Protoss on 101 probes, but he's not.
No, definitely not rich. He's got all the gateways, but none of the minerals required for it, so he is back to really depending on the big Colossus to kind of save the day at the end of many of these battles. Which, I mean, they've been able to do so far, taking back the map control after, I guess you would call a defense. I don't know if it's successful, but a defense of the Liberator push out. I mean, this has either got to win the game on the counterattack or make FoxeR extremely scared for 4 or 5 minutes. I don't think either one's going to happen, but once again, Ashbringer says, hold my beer, I'm going to try it anyways.
No, this one is crazy. This one's even crazier than all the other ones before. He was outnumbered this time around. His army was not bigger. The Colossus are starting to be very, very exposed. There's a few more Zealots showing up, but I think the Marauders can do the Marauder thing, and that is stim forward, get on top of the Robo units, and FoxeR sends it to a rubber match. These two having one hell of a series. We're going back to Europe for Game 5. It's been a while that we had a fun, actually excellent best of 5 that went to distance, but this is a wild series. Ashbringer was honestly doing surprisingly good at first, but he got way too overeager. But he basically tried to bust into the main base. There's like 40 bio units standing there. Like, he couldn't do that.
No, absolutely not. I think choosing that moment to perhaps, I think you have to bully. You have to, you know, be like, scare the Terran and make them go all the way back into the ramp. I think that is somewhat necessary, but I think perhaps at an exact moment the Terran goes, oh no, go back to the ramp, boys. Maybe spread out your zealots, right? Try and hit the orbital that was over to the right side. Try and pick them up in a war prism to hit the main base. I think the planetary is at the 4th, so that's not super possible. But basically, just like start spreading them out and buying time and making the Terran really grit their teeth because they can't clean things up and immediately counterattack because they know they should have that great army afterwards. But then he did just completely back away, which again, I don't think he can win from that point, but completely backing away did kind of give the green light to FoxeR, who already knew he was in a good position.
If he would have sent just a few zealots, and let's be honest, he had plenty of them, towards that 3 o'clock base, then at least you can know that there is a base there. You can start slicing up the command center. If it starts flying, maybe you warp in a few stalkers. The man had 18 gateways anyway. He would have been totally fine, but he did not do it. We are waiting for Indy to get things going. Indy is obviously our Polish caster. It seems that some of them are in game. I hope they didn't start without me. Or you.
Wait, I am in a game with Indy and Ashbringer.
Okay, I'm getting invited right now. Royal Blood.
Okay.
When you say in a game, ZombieGrub, that gives me the idea that it's started.
Sorry.
You're in the lobby.
Yes, it's in the lobby.
It's okay, I love educating the Americans. Makes me happy.
Is that an American thing, calling it a game instead of a lobby?
No, it's just a meme because you are a man. I'm just teasing. Alright guys, game 5. Royal Blood. Indy against... actually, we should get Indy to play once. I'm sure he would always be down. He's casted like a solid 20 editions or so of the Big Brain Bouts. And Indy's obviously still a great player. We'll find a nice match for him.
He really goes fairly far in the Open Cups, and he kind of goes toe-to-toe. Like, he gets knocked out around the round of 32, actually. And sometimes he goes toe-to-toe with the people in the round of 32.
Yeah. No, so. He's solid. A while ago, he actually had an epic run. I kind of forgot who he beat there, but I think he made it into the quarterfinals. But he beat 2 good players and 1 amazing player, and we were all getting pretty high. We're like, Indy, let's go! But, then in brutal StarCraft 2 fashion, the magical run ends in a very one-sided manner. But it was still, it was fun. Alrighty guys, final game, a rubber match. That's what we love to see on the Friday night in the Big Brain Bouts. Who's gonna walk away with 80 bucks? Who's walking away with 20? We are about to find out. In the bottom left side, representing Starcom, this is Ashbringer.
And in the top right, as the green Terran for Mlim, it is FoxeR.
I'm sure Clem will be very happy that we're giving Mlem some love. And knowing Clem, he's probably watching. Clem is a good dude who always supports his friends, and I know that Clem really appreciates FoxeR, so he's probably lurking in the shadows.
He's actually such a sweet kid. I know we're not casting him right now, but there's a really weird thing that I guess a lot of women out there will pay attention to. Absolutely, the man spreading. Absolutely. And it's like the worst thing I noticed. I get in the shuttle with Clem. Mm-hmm. He's in the middle. He's like, you know, like he's basically like tightened up, you know, like a little package. He's giving me the most space ever. So I was the man spreader.
Now, the funniest thing is that this is not really a secret in the StarCraft 2 scene, guys, but out of all the players or casters or personalities in the StarCraft 2 scene, I really do think that the biggest man spreader ever is Smix, by far. Like, Smix literally just sits like this everywhere as he goes. And then sometimes after like 10 or 15 minutes, he realizes he's like, oh my gosh, I'm being so rude, as everybody else has like their knees together. And Smix is just sitting there like an absolute queen. It's really funny.
It is. I love when she spreads out all her stuff and then she just takes up the whole entire couch. But then I also love like when she's in a more casual like get up to go have drinks afterwards or something. So she's in jeans and a dress. And then she actually man spreads. Like she like gets down on like the couch, you know, at the bar, and she's just like full on out.
Yes, Smix is the goat. We miss Smixy. It's a real
does.
shame that we didn't. Obviously, Rachel's awesome too, guys. Don't get me wrong. But obviously, Smix is kind of our OG, our buddy, and it's always nice to have Smix there. Especially because Smix obviously can do the 2-in-1 and interview the Koreans on stage. So I hope that Smix can make it over for Atlanta one last time. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Hopefully, I think it's obviously an easier ride for her. But all right, what do we got going on in this game? I believe this is a very different opener. That was a Sentry first coming out of Ashbringer.
And FoxeR is actually going to go back to what he started the best of 5 off with, which is that Reaper into Reactor into not 1 but 2 CCs. One of them on location though.
Yeah. Not as secure as the very first game of the day, so FoxeR kind of bookending this series with similar strategies. Going to get a probe to start things off. Now that hallucination from the Sentry is going to be excellent for that scouting, right? It could have seen that it was a 1 base, it could have seen that it was a 3 racks, and now in this case it's going to see that it's a 3 CC. I do wonder how Ashbringer is going to change things up. Going for a Forge follow-up too. I mean, Ashbringer choosing game 5 to really throw a loop for the build orders.
Yeah, and at least he's going to be able to get a good scout off with that hallucinated Phoenix. And I do kind of wonder, I'm a bit worried, because if you play the way that FoxeR is playing, you're obviously going to have access to a late factory and a late starport against a man who's absolutely obsessed with Colossus timings. Risky strategy that FoxeR is going for here, but I'm very curious to see how it plays out.
I'm still just curious how Ashbringer is going to make this work. I mean, because we have seen this before. I mean, one time we had it, I don't remember when it was, but we had like someone do it depths, weirdly enough.
Yeah, was it Australia?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's right. That was interesting. I don't remember if it worked.
Zealots. So he's gonna go charge first. This is giving me some 4 Jumi vibes, but it's not quite the 4 Jumi. So Ashbringer is gonna do something well. I personally don't think this is a very good idea. Because of the 3-rack setup, FoxeR is always gonna have access to a lot of units. And I can only assume that he wants to go for a quick Warp Prism and be somewhat aggressive. Yeah, it's a lot of gateways. I don't know, it's very hit or miss, right? It all comes down to how much surface area do the Zealots find. Is the bio nicely tucked into a choke point, or is the bio very exposed and get the Zealots just get around them?
Yes, it's a very risky maneuver. I feel like, you know, risk in bringing out some old builds or some very dedicated builds is always worthy in a best of, and I think we all kind of applaud whenever players do it for their final game. But this one in particular, I feel like I've seen it, or a slightly different version of it, and I was like, oh, kind of old school, see if the Terran responds. And then the Terran can even be totally shocked. They have no idea, and they still manage to make it work, just because I think Terrans have at least gotten better at making sure, oh, well, okay. Making sure to defend against things that they don't know are happening, but I totally cursed it. FoxeR is moving out, which is not what I wanted him to do.
No, that's actually kind of a nightmare scenario, right? Because if FoxeR just keeps his units at home, he'd be absolutely cooking. Now, the funny thing is that even though Ashbringer went charge first, he wants to go for a Nexus. What is happening over here? Who's gonna go home? Who gets away with murder? Like, I have no idea how this is gonna go. What I do know is that if FoxeR fights near a battery, he's gonna be in trouble. As he throws down the scan, he sees his army. He's probably not too surprised by it. Ashbringer has no idea that those units aren't there, or that the units aren't at home, rather.
Yes.
This is the first time he sees it.
This is so odd. He's going to get jumped upon. No shield right at third base, which is the only exit path for him. He's going to lose so many units, as well as, of course, the third base. Now, that's a simple cancel. Maybe not the biggest of deals. Could have been worse if the natural was hit. That's still losing a decent chunk of units, and there's no guarantee that this Warp Prism will actually do damage. It took a while to get over here. Reinforcements are around. The SCVs can be pulled away and then pulled into the fight and probably be worth it, or just hold position.
Yeah, a little bit of hold position, Micro. That's excellent. Because the Warp Prism didn't show up immediately, FoxeR was able to crank out a few more bio units, and this is actually just turning out in a best case scenarios almost for FoxeR, as he probably should stop shooting in his own barracks and start shooting at Zealots. Maybe lost a few more SCVs there than he really had to lose, but it's okay, because he was able to dive on these stalkers, on the sentries, and got the cancel on the Nexus and even killed the pilot.
Yeah, exactly. He definitely did more damage. And yeah, it was a cancel, so there's at least the good news. For Ashbringer, it's still kind of a similar story to some of the previous games of this series, where it's that he's not necessarily in one of the better positions. He's certainly behind on the economy, but could he possibly get to the good army. This is one of the more questionable games for that. He's got one Colossus, enough resources for the extended thermal lance, and a very fast +1 is turned into a very fast +2, but maybe he can afford the Colossus. Can he afford enough fodder to protect the Colossus?
So funny, right? Because obviously if FoxeR would have stayed at home, then we get a very different game. Let's see what the Zealots can get on then. But since FoxeR moved out, if Ashbringer would have been able to just spot that move out in the center of the map, he could have wiped in 8 Zealots, the Guardian Shield, he storms forward with +1, and then you have a War Prism on the other side of the map. He could have been absolutely cooking, but the units were so close and he still didn't see it until he exposed the Stalkers, exposed the sentries, and then obviously started taking ugly fights. And because that all took a little while before he was out of the woods, FoxeR had time to get some extra units out. But Ashbringer wouldn't be Ashbringer if he doesn't rush out 2 Colossus and ZombieGrub. This is an 8-minute +2. Like, this game, economically, it's a nightmare for Ashbringer, but this army has potential, and he's good with his army.
Oh, the AI, the bunkers were being placed, which made the Marauders move forward, not backwards into the choke. I mean, you're talking about the limited number of army over on the right side. That could have been a big deal, but more army coming from the left. Actually, so much more army on the left side. A couple of force fields get slapped down, allowing the Zealots to add their contribution. But the Colossus weren't necessarily firing at the desired places at all times. Not a whole lot of anti-air. The orbital will live. FoxeR will survive, and the game will continue.
Yeah, 48 workers apiece. FoxeR throws down the scan on the other side of the map, wants to know how bad is this? And after he saw only a few probes on that mineral line, he's like, well, probably lost a little more than I was supposed to, but I guess I'm still in it. And he absolutely is still in it, but it is important to keep an eye on these upgrades, because if Ashbringer keeps on chrono boosting his forge, which he is absolutely doing, we're gonna get +3 against +1 armor, ZombieGrub, and that definitely is going to be pain for Marines and Marauders on the ground.
That's gonna look so weird, though. You know, like the Colossus actually doing damage to the Marauders, but then the Zealots still melting to the Marines, and it being a mostly Zealot Colossus army. It's it's gonna be an interesting dynamic. Still on 4 gases for the Protoss, right? So whatever Archons are making, not gonna be super plentiful, and certainly nowhere near going to a double robo setup or anything like that. Another scan, because it really is a tough game to call, but I think the information has been gathered by FoxeR at this point. And I don't know, I guess kind of just stay the course, get into those Vikings, which is definitely the best thing you can do right now as they chase down the War Prism.
We're gonna have an 8 Marine drop potentially in the main base, but Ashbringer is all over it this time around, has warped in plenty of units. Well, we're just gonna have a very weird game where the economies are a bit smaller than we normally expect them to be in a 10-minute game. The upgrades are just kind of all over the shop, but it's very good news for FoxeR that he did have the armor in time, and the Suto upgrades are going, and it always feels good as a Terran when you're heading into the Gulls and the Vikings at the same time, right? Where it's not the scenarios like, okay, I'm safe against the Colossus, but I'm bad against Archons, or Archons are going to suck, but at least I can kill, or maybe I can kill the Archons, but getting the Colossus is hard. FoxeR technically has the blueprint on how to wipe the floor with this Protoss army, but it's still going to be close and difficult.
If he gets the Vikings over a impassable terrain, you know, and just shells away on the Colossus, like what we're looking at right now, yeah, Ashbringer should just be 100% dead. If it's a little different, if the Colossus get to actually be involved in the fights, I mean, they're kind of their job in a lot of these PvT fights are to do the damage before they die, you know? If you can save it, great. If you can micro against the Vikings, great. But a lot of the times you pull the trigger, you think they're going to die, hopefully they do the damage. That's actually what he just is like solely dependent on almost, is that +3 working on those Colossus. If the Zealots and the Stalkers are what's left alone, I don't think they're gonna beat out 2-2 bio just with +3 and no armor. It's gonna be a tougher ask.
Absolutely, and I still don't want to make any predictions because Ashbringer just proves me wrong more often than I think almost every other Protoss out there. There's something he does with his Zealots that clearly he is very good at. A lot of Terrans will just call it he's A-moving, he's A-moving. Well, I've tried A-moving many times myself, and I definitely do not get the same results as he does in some of these fights. So there must be some magic to it. There wasn't a whole lot of magic to that War Prism attempt into the main base because that is a notorious amount of missile turrets, and then a couple of Vikings patrolling the main as well. Yeah, you're not gonna drop that. FoxeR says, Dragon skills, never again.
Well, since FoxeR seems to be checking around for the 4th bases and still doesn't see one, he is just playing a defensive game, trying to get farther ahead, you know, 4 upgrades, hopefully, once he pays attention. And then, well, this drop's probably not the most important. So this drop a little bit more, digging into the 3rd base probes. Yeah, back to my original point. If FoxeR gets those 3/3 upgrades and Liberators and stays at home, Ashbringer is going to falter. You know, he's basically hoping that FoxeR moves out to try and kill him and then fails at it. But if FoxeR stays at home, I can't see him losing.
Well, I think this is it, ZombieGrub. I think we're about to get an answer to all those questions that you just raised, because Ashbringer hasn't rebuilt any probes. He's got 140 Protoss army supply, and this will decide the second best of 5 of the night, guys. Will it be FoxeR that walks away with 80 bucks, or will it be Ashbringer? We start the 5 with 20 Zealots, and of course a forward blink. And if these Archons get some shots up on the Vikings, it does get scary, as with a whole bunch of hallucinated Colossus. Ashbringer is here with all of its glory and a mighty big Protoss army, but he is just ignoring the Vikings. He could have killed them so much easier.
Yeah, he absolutely could have. Good on FoxeR to drag this battle out as much as he did, constantly pulling back and getting more EMPs down, obliterating on the frontline Archons so that eventually the Colossus will also fall. And once it does go down to just pure gateway units, it's a lot easier to size up, right? You know, if you just save a certain amount of bio, which he so far has done, please unload them though, for the love of God, then he's probably okay, but that unload came in fairly late.
Yeah, I mean, Ashbringer is ultra broke. Ashbringer got dropped in the natural in the 3rd base, so all that FoxeR needs to do is clean this army up one time and one time only, and I do think he is going to do it. Is he losing SCVs? Yes, but that does not matter. And the American brings it home after a pretty damn epic best of 5. FoxeR gets his 2nd win on the Friday night. Last time he took out Hydra. Tonight he took out Ashbringer. That was a very cool series.
That was. I mean, I was kind of even panicking up until the end, right? The supplies were absolutely in the gutter for Ashbringer, but then witnessing the medevac still loaded up with Marines and Marauders as the Stalkers grew in closer, I was like, please no. Please, no. But yes, towards the end, it was more and more obvious the bio was going to win out. But what an interesting sequence of events for the entire best of 5, ending on one of the more interesting discussions about Game 5. Sentry opener, mass charge lots, weird kind of pseudo base trade situation. It had almost everything you want from a StarCraft game.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I do really think, like, if you would resume that from replay up to the point where the Vikings are all above the Archons and the Stalkers, I really think if Ashbringer presses hold position there, he obliterates that Viking force. And if he saves 2 Colossus, I actually think that he can still bring that home, even of 24 probes. Like, I generally think that he would have still been able to bring that home, but didn't happen. That was a very long series, guys. It has to happen on a night that I have Lambo, who said, all right, Roddy, I'll play, but just don't make it too late. Well, here we are, 20 minutes behind schedule. We're going to go ahead and take a couple minutes for ourselves, and after that, ZombieGrub and I will be back for our 3rd series of the night. You guys already saw it in the prediction. It's Harstem, the captain versus Shem. I'll see you guys soon.